Yeah, total depravity. We've all got a broken anatomy. From those who are...
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Hallé with Witness the Light Music, and tonight we're doing a breakdown of 5, a single off of Joshua Kriese and Evident SDG's project, newest project, Ad Fontes, Volume 1, and this song here is a banger. I know y'all are digging this one. That's probably the most popular track off the project. Awesome track. I enjoyed mixing it. I'm just going to break it down a little quick here for you guys so you guys can hear exactly what I did and maybe be inspired for some mix ideas and techniques. Check it out. First, I'm just going to play back the intro.
What's the point of more theology? Honestly, I feel we've left up theology proper. I'm just some clay trying to show the potter.
So this is actually a sampled vocal off of Josh's first project, Solas. It's off of the track Why Bother. So what I did was, as you can hear, it's his literally it's his vocals taken from that project, and then I slowed it down to the tempo of this instrumental, and then just threw it in here with some saturation from Isotope, just to kind of give it that grit that we're hearing, and then a little bit more. It's just processing. Essentially, my idea was to get this this part of the vocal sounding very powerful and strong, with a little bit more detail and grit. So I'm going to show you guys as I move into Josh's actual verse. You can kind of hear what I did to it here.
Yeah, total depravity. We've all got a broken anatomy. From those who are hopeless to vocal, close-minded to those that's enrolled in academies. Genesis 3's where it happened. Verse 6, a despicable travesty. They deny an original sin, think it's sickness within, but they don't know the gravity.
Yeah, so essentially, the whole idea was trying to get this to mend and to blend well with the instrumental. As you can hear, the instrumental.
Verse 6, a despicable travesty. They deny an original sin, think it's sickness within, but they don't know the gravity. We've all got...
So going into the vocal processing I did for Josh's vocal, simple EQ just to kind of get the lows out, because I'm sending it into an auto tune from UAD. Simple, a pretty quick retune speed. I feel like because the rap is so quick and there's not too much harmony to it, having a quick retune speed actually gives you a little bit of that effect, that auto-tune effect, even though Josh isn't really doing the auto-tune rap, but it does kind of correct him and puts him in a pocket harmonically with the instrumental, which just adds character and adds kind of flavor. And then from there, I went into a mic mod. Now, this is a great plugin because I had 2 different artists sending me music for this, sending me vocal tracks for this, and they're using 2 different microphones. Josh is using a Rode NT1, and I made it sound, has the same kind of EQ curve as the Newman TLM 103, with some saturation on there just to kind of give it that power. I'll break down Evidence, his vocals, because he's actually using, if I can find it here, he's actually using a, he's using a AKG Perception 120. And then I made that also sound like a Newman TLM 103 with some saturation and then a little bit of gain reduction to make sure it doesn't sound too overbearing. Now, going back to Josh's vocal, sometimes the way Josh raps and the microphone he has in the room that he has, I think there's a little bit of bass lacking in his voice. So I threw a little bit of bass frequency into his vocals. And I'm going to play it back so you guys can hear.
We've all got a broken anatomy. From those who are hopeless to vocal, close-minded to those that's enrolled in academies. Genesis 3.
Just get, if you heard that, you just heard a little bit of a bump in in the 215 hertz range, just a little bit. I'm only using a little bit minus 16%, minus 16 in intensity. R bass, that's a great little plugin for that. And then I like to saturate his vocals a little bit more using a little bit of oxide tape from UAD. I'll give you guys an idea what that sounds like.
We've all got a broken anatomy. From those who are hopeless to vocal, close-minded to those that's enrolled.
Actually, sorry, something I forgot to do was let me bring in the vocals without any processing on them. That way you guys can kind of hear exactly what I had to work with.
We've all got a broken anatomy. From those who are hopeless to vocal, close-minded to those that's enrolled in academies. Genesis 3's where it happened. Verse 6, a despicable travesty. They deny an original sin, think it's sickness within, but they don't know the gravity. We've all got a broken anatomy. From those who are hopeless to vocal, close-minded to those that's enrolled in academies. Genesis 3's where it happened. Verse 6, a despicable. Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress.
So how I process my vocals, what I like to do is I like to bring in a little bit of a kind of a chain. My first kind of vocal track gives me a little bit of character that then brings it into another vocal track where I process a little bit more. I think maybe I do a little bit over processing, but I kind of get the sound that I'm looking for while I'm doing that. So essentially what you can see here is I have his vocal track, and then I have the bus that I'm sending his vocals to, that then it goes out to the main vocal bus. So from there, I kind of process everything the way that I want to send things to: parallel compression, a doubler, a chorus, and a parallel bass for his vocals. So now I'll show you exactly what I got without any sort of processing.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 under 30 be burying any notion of boasting up in the physical. What are you thinking when you twisting all these principles? Wishing that.
So you heard a little bit of a bump there with that mic mod, is because of the tube saturation. Really great plugin if you're needing a little bit of tube saturation to kind of clear up maybe a muddy vocal or get a different type of EQ curve. And that's what this Antares mic mod can do for you. And then we move into an R bass. Again, like I said, I bumped up the bass in his vocals with some oxide.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical.
So once I was in the oxide, I started getting the tone that I wanted. So I started to kind of chop things up and take out frequencies that I felt weren't blending well with the music. Now every move that I'm making right now is actually done with the music, and that's the most important part of this. As you can see, I'm dipping a lot of the highs out. I think Josh's microphone and his tone ends up collecting a little bit of ringing frequencies in the higher range of his vocals, and so therefore I have to reduce those in order to get a good blend with the beat and also a good blend with the other artist on the track. So a lot of correction stuff happening right now.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 under 30 be burying any notion of boasting up in the physical. What are you thinking when you twisting all these principles? Wishing that you could flip them by making them all divisible. Missing critical interval, cynical, and it's pitiful. Pick the book of Ephesians, no reason for you to miss it, dude. The atonement's limited. Matthew 1:21's definitive. Acts 20:28 on your plate, and the state said he.
So if you can see, Pro Q3 here lets me really get in there with some EQs and get some frequencies out that I feel aren't really working with his vocal. One of the things that I'm seeing here that I did see was there's a big buildup of frequencies in about 10K range where it kind of started to get harsh. And then also in kind of the lower mud range, there's a little bit of that buildup. I think the room that Josh was recording in wasn't optimal. So that kind of creates that sort of scenario where you have to do a lot of correction with it and then just kind of get the sound that you want. No slight on Josh, my homie. But of course it's difficult. You know, this guy's got like 4 kids and he's recording hip hop every single day. You know, he's got to do it in his living room. But you know, you do what you can with what you got, right? That's how we do this. And then we jump into some Pro DS because of that frequency that was kind of bumping out and jumping out at me. with the EQ here.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be burying any notion of boasting up in the physical.
Then I go into a VMR slate. That allows me to get a little bit of level and kind of get things balanced with some compression. Trimmer just to kind of control the volume going in.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be...
I like to keep my vocals going into slate in the green, so that way everything else going through that chain is being controlled.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's...
And my favorite setting for virtual channel is the Brit Neve. I think that's the British Neve setting. It gives me the grit, the power that I like. And then going into the FG116, the FET compressor, that just kind of gives me the a little bit of the thickness I'm looking for in the vocal. You're going to notice with it on that it's going to be louder.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be burying any notion of...
I'm only getting about -1 sorry. I'm only getting a little bit of gain reduction. And that gain reduction is kind of giving me the leveling effect that I'm looking for with this compressor. And then revival just to add a little bit of shimmer in this vocal.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be burying any notion of...
And then my favorite compressor of all time is the cleanest compressor. I think it works miracles and it gets things sounding super clean, super great. It's the FabFilter Pro C2. And this FabFilter Pro C2 is actually getting me a lot of the level that I was looking for with not that too much gain reduction. Check it out. Where are we here? There we go.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be burying any notion of boasting up in the physical. What do you...
All right, so now that I'm sending into another channel. I can't believe I did this much processing on this track, but I don't know. I guess maybe I was just in a mood, right? So some more compression, just to kind of start evening things out a little more as well.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be burying any notion of boasting up in the physical. What do you think?
I think what I was attempting to do was to kind of get his vocals sounding thick. And I think that was one of the issues with the recording, was that the vocals wasn't as thick as I wanted. So that was my goal, was to just get the vocals sounding thick and big. And I was able to accomplish that with this chain. Now, this isn't typically how I always mix, but I guess for this specific track, I felt that this was the most important way the best way to get his vocals sounding thick. So, some more compression. I'm starting to feel like this is an overcompressed track, but it's sounding great. I am enjoying this track. This is one of the best, I guess maybe one of the best tracks on the project. I think I got a couple other favorites too. So from a bunch of compression, we go into some coloring EQ. So this EQ is kind of giving me a boost in the 3K, and then a little bit a boost in the 100 hertz. So we can hear what it does.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be burying any notion of boasting up in the physical.
And of course, the classic Waves Renaissance EQ6. This is going to give you that air that you can hear. I'm going to bypass it.
Next, election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be burying any notion of boasting up in the physical. What are you thinking when you twisting all these principles, wishing that you could flip them by making them all divisible, missing critical interval, cynical and it's pitiful. Pick the book of Ephesians, no reason for you to miss it, dude. The atonement's limited. Matthew 1:21's the...
Now, I got here some parallel compression. So I'm using the Manic compressor from Bose Digital Labs as a parallel compressor to kind of bring up some of the thickness on the different types of settings. You have clean, sheer, gritty, digital, vintage, smooth. I found smooth was probably the best for this vocal. Not too much of an input drive on it, and just barely giving me a little bit of volume with that with that wet parallel compression setting there. And then moving into some multi-band dynamics. So this was from Pro Fab Filter, and this is one of the best multi-band dynamic compressors that you can find on the market. It's great. You guys, if you're into mixing, I would strongly recommend any of the stuff from Fab Filter. It definitely will help you get the sound you're looking for once you understand and know how to run the plugin.
Next election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be burying any notion of boasting up in the physical. What are you thinking when you twisting all these principles, wishing that you...
So then from there, I went into the parallel compressor. That's a send, and I'm not sending too much. What am I sending here? Let's take a look here. If I can bring up the fader for it. Where is it? My doubler. Okay, I can't find the fader. 1 second here. So, there we go. So I got my parallel compressor.
Next election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be burying any notion of boasting up in the physical. What are you thinking when you twisting all these principles, wishing that you could flip them by making them all divisible, missing critical, interval, cynical, and it's pitiful. Pick the book of Ephesians, no reason for you to miss it, dude. The atonement's limited. Matthew 1.
And then I'm sending, that's on a send, and that's going into the parallel compressor, and then going into a DBX 160 is what I'm using for parallel this run, and then the doubler, and my doubler is going to be, which one is it here? It's going to be the doubler 4 by Waves, and then my chorus, another chorusing effect to kind of give me that vibe. Let me see here. What am I using for chorus? Sending that into an effect rack from Sound Toys, which is then with some saturation from the decapitator, a micro shift, and then a crystallizer, and then some parallel bass to add it to his vocals, because I was missing a lot. I know it appeared that I cut a lot, but I was just trying to cut the frequencies that weren't working with the instrumental, and I think that's one of the biggest issues, is if we don't have a good recording, in a sense of there's some issues with some frequencies, the environment that things are being recorded in. You gotta have to cut and add to flavor, and add also according to what you believe sounds good, and also what blends well with the music. So
Next election's unconditional. They try to stress and press that it's unbiblical. But Romans 8 verses 28 down to 30 be burying any notion of boasting up in the physical. What are you thinking when you twisting all these principles, wishing that you could flip them by making them all divisible, missing critical, interval, cynical, and it's pitiful. Pick the book of Ephesians, no reason for you to miss it, dude. The atonement's limited. Matthew 1:21's definitive. Acts 20:28 on your plate, and the states that he paid.
All right, so I went into a plate from Deverb. I typically don't even use much of the stock stuff, but this sounded really great. I really enjoyed how this Deverb was sounding on Josh's vocal, so I started using the plate, the Deverb on the plate setting, and then I went into an echo as well to kind of send and give his vocal some space, and that was from a plugin mix, EchoFlex. I typically don't even actually use this plugin that much as well, but it sounded great. So you do what you can to make things sound great. So that's Josh's breakdown, and then also from that, copying some of those settings over into his chain, into his vocal chain, which then allows me to kind of move and work fast, where now his ad libs and all those parts end up blending well with his vocals. So let's see what that sounds like here.
Total depravity, broken anatomy, rolling academy.
Yeah. General Sin think it's you. No. Real
So yeah, you get the idea. It's nothing too special when it comes to the ad libs, except you want to be able to kind of give his ad libs some space and make things blend well. So that's about the breakdown for Josh's vocals. And what I'm going to do is break down Miguel's vocals, but that'll be in the second video. If you guys want to check out how I dealt with Miguel's vocals and also going into some special effects for what I did with their vocals and some stutters, I'll be breaking that down in a second video. But for now, thanks for tuning in. And if you have any questions or inquiries about getting me to mix and master your music, let me know. You can hit me up. My contact and email information is on the bottom of the screen. And you can also visit me at witnessthelightmusic.com. Well, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you did watch the whole video, sorry if it kind of bored you that I wasn't able to really explain everything to details. But that, going a deep dive into each plugin and each setting and everything that I've done, I can do that on different videos. And I think, hopefully if this gave you any ideas on how to mix or any ideas, any inspiration on what to do on your projects, hopefully that was my intent, that maybe that can encourage you in that sense. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate it. I'm just going to end it off here with Miguel's vocal. And from there, God bless. Thanks.
Begin with grace and this great salvation, kid. Starts with the Father, homie, he is so gracious. Ephesians states it, kid, saved by grace. At this verse 8 and 9, homie, see the correlation. His full knowledge in salvation is plain. His select purpose to pass in its frame. Not just the plan in saving his people, but all of his doings and actualization. By faith alone, apart from works, but all the works done by the word is actual. What Christ has done to give the Son and place his sons in right positions is factual.